Bright opens the terrace door and finds his daughter reading, because a homeless black girl taught her how. He lifts his phone as the first shutter clicks from the street and the head of security waits for orders. Does he crush the moment? Or turn it into a rescue that detonates the town? Welcome to the channel, a place where every story touches the heart and reminds us of life's deepest truths. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and become part of our ever-growing family. Before we begin, drop a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from and what time it is right now. She rose before the shelter lights, nudged Ruth awake, and guided her through the routine the staff liked to see. Toothbrush, sweater, meds. A soft humming that meant the storm had moved a little farther away. Venessa checked the transit bulletin taped to the corkboard, whisper-counted bus times like multiplication tables, then slipped a wrinkled photocopy, The American Revolution, Causes and Consequences, into her hoodie pocket. It was a withdrawn chapter from the library's discard bin, stamped Disposal in red. Not to Venessa. To her, it was a key. Outside, the wind off the river smelled like metal. She walked the long way, avoiding the bottle return crowd on Brighton Ave, and reached the little commuter shed near the tracks where she kept her treasures: a pencil nub, 2 paper clips, a folded napkin scribbled with dates, 1765 Stamp Act, 1773 Tea Party. She read under the rattle of a passing train until the page stayed in her head. At Hawthorne Preparatory, the hallways shone like someone polished the air. Jessica Wallace held her shoulders straight, chin tucked, breathing through the drumbeat in her ears. "Posture, excellent," said the literature teacher. Then she called on Jessica to read. The first line swam. Letters traded places like mean little fish. Jessica felt the room lean toward her, waiting, kind in the way that hurts. She picked a word she recognized, then another, then missed one that she knew yesterday. The teacher smiled too brightly. "That's fine, Jessica. We'll come back." Her classmates didn't laugh. They didn't need to. Jessica's cheeks did it for them. She promised herself again, don't mess up at lunch, don't cry on the way home, don't tell Dad. Venessa's route skimmed Weston's stone walls and quiet driveways. On the Wallace property, a back panel of fence didn't quite meet its hinge. She had learned the way weeks ago, the way deer learn gaps: slow, careful, respectful. The south lawn opened like a private park. An oak rooted itself into blue sky, throwing a perfect circle of shade. Venessa exhaled and sat. She wasn't stealing. She was resting. Jessica escaped the house with a history book hugged to her chest, the words still wobbling. The kitchen staff asked if she wanted cocoa. She said she wanted air. The oak had always been her safe witness. Today, the circle of shade wasn't empty. They saw each other at the same time. A girl in a hawthorn blazer. A girl with braids and thrift-worn sleeves. The book slipped from Jessica's fingers and thudded open. "I'm not," Venessa started, already scooting to stand. "I can't read this," Jessica blurted, then flushed. "I mean, I can read, just not like this part." Venessa paused. "Which part?" Jessica pointed to a paragraph about taxes and tea and rage. Venessa settled back onto the grass, cautious, hands open. "It's like bus fare," she said. "You ride the route every day, then one morning they triple the price without asking you. You still have to get to work. You still have to eat. Now you're angry. Some people shout. Some people dump the whole fare box into the river." Jessica's mouth opened a little. "So the tea party was a message about control and cost," Venessa finished. "And dignity." They leaned over the book. A bee wrote a tiny circle in the air and drifted away. Venessa tapped the margins with the pencil nub. Jessica traced each sentence with her finger, humming the rhythm the way Venessa showed her. The page stopped swimming. Dates clicked into place like train times. From the second-floor window of the stone house, a figure in a navy suit crossed the glass, a quick, startled shape, there and gone. Neither girl looked up. "What about the Stamp Act?" Jessica asked. "Stamps were like receipts you had to buy to prove you paid for paper," Venessa said. "Like being charged a fee for permission to be alive." She half smiled. "People don't like that." Jessica laughed, an honest, small sound she hadn't heard from herself at school in months. "Can you, maybe, meet me here again? Just for a few minutes. It helps." Vanessa's eyes flicked toward the fence gap, then back to the book. "Same time tomorrow," she said. "If I can." "If you can't, I'll wait," Jessica said, closing the cover gently like it might bruise. "I'm Jessica." "Venessa," she replied, the name solid in her mouth. She stood, brushing grass from her knees, and backed toward the gap. Jessica stayed under the oak a moment longer, holding the book to her chest, steady for once. In the far window, the suited man moved again, closer this time, his face turned toward the lawn, his expression unreadable. If a barefoot girl can make the words hold still, what happens when the billionaire father sees her? Don't blink. Keep watching. The next morning began like all the others. With a lie, Venessa told herself, "Today will be easy." She woke to the shuffle of plastic slippers in the shelter hallway and the smell of instant coffee steeping in styrofoam cups. Ruth was already humming at the window, tapping the glass like it might open into something better. Venessa helped her mother dress, guided her through breakfast, and smiled until the nurse looked away. When Ruth drifted into one of her quiet trances, Venessa slipped out, whispering to Ms. Priya, the volunteer who always pretended not to notice. "Back before curfew," Venessa said. Ms. Priya nodded, sliding a granola bar across the desk. "And if the rain comes, library, not the shed." Vanessa's shed was a forgotten commuter stop near the tracks, half covered in ivy, her own small kingdom of scavenged notebooks and dull pencils. She checked her hidden stashes like ritual: 3 stubs in a tin, 2 paperbacks warped by rain. Her handwriting filled the margins of old leaflets, equations, new words, plans, a whole education balanced on cardboard. There had been a time, a brief one, when she'd belonged inside a classroom. A cafeteria worker had registered her under a niece's name, paid the first term's fees. For 6 glorious weeks, she'd sat in a real chair, raised her hand, learned that her brain could outrun anyone's pity. Then the woman's husband lost his job, and Vanessa's name vanished from the ledger like chalk in rain. Non-payment, they said, not non-brilliance. She never forgot the difference. Across the river in Weston, Bright Wallace straightened his cufflinks and watched a stock ticker that refused to turn green. The boardroom around him smelled of glass and ego. His latest acquisition, a failing ed-tech startup that promised to revolutionize learning through AI, was bleeding money and meaning. "Impact metrics," someone said. "Social perception," another added. Bright tuned them out. He'd funded 100 philanthropic projects that looked good in headlines but changed nothing beneath them. He thought of Jessica, of how she'd smiled politely last night when he asked about school, how she said fine in that small, scared way that meant don't ask again. He told himself she was just tired. He told himself a dozen things his own father used to say. And the echo of that voice was exactly what he feared becoming. Jessica's morning had been another quiet war. Tutors came and went, each armed with flashcards and fixed patience. They spoke slower, louder, never truer. Letters still danced. She'd memorized tricks for pretending. Squint, tilt the page, underline random lines so it looked like reading. Her report cards sparkled with effort and excuses. But under the oak yesterday, Vanessa's metaphor, bus fares, and anger, had made history feel human. For once, comprehension didn't taste like failure. At lunch, Jessica packed 2 sandwiches instead of 1. She waited until the last bell, tucked a hotel laundry pencil into her blazer pocket, and hurried down the estate path. Venessa was already there, cross-legged under the oak, muttering to herself in syllables. Revolution, she clapped softly. Revo-lu-tion. Jessica grinned and joined in, their palms echoing lightly against summer air. It works, she whispered. That's phonics, Venessa said. You feel the word before you spell it. Jessica offered one sandwich and the pencil. From the hotel. They have hundreds. Venessa held it like a relic. Then this one's mine. The girls read together until the shadows lengthened. Somewhere behind the hedges, a faint mechanical click sounded. So soft they didn't notice. Inside the mansion, Bright's head of security frowned at a monitor. A motion camera on the south lawn had captured movement. Small, quick, untagged. No ID ping. Just a blur of brown and white, like a trick of sunlight. Do you want me to check it out, sir? He asked later that night. Bright barely looked up from his laptop. Send me the clip. On the screen, two figures sat beneath the oak, one in uniform, one barefoot. The image froze mid-laugh. Bright leaned closer, uncertain what he was seeing, and why it made something shift inside his chest. Security just flagged a shadow on the south lawn, and Jessica's first real smile is about to cost them both. Watch as secret lessons bloom, and the risk sharpens. Bright replayed the footage 3 times that night. Each loop ended on the same still frame, Jessica laughing, a barefoot girl beside her. No threat, no trespass. Yet something about it tugged between curiosity and instinct. He saved the clip in a private folder, labeled it unreviewed, and told himself he'd deal with it later. But by the next afternoon, the later had already begun. For 2 straight weeks, the oak tree became their classroom. Jessica brought sandwiches, notebooks, and her school textbooks. Venessa came with her mind. Fractions, Venessa said one afternoon, tearing a sandwich into pieces. See, this half is the same as 2/4. Jessica blinked, then laughed. So, math is basically lunch? Exactly, Venessa grinned. Math is food that never runs out. Another day, they mapped history timelines on the grass using twigs. Think of it like the Boston subway, Venessa explained, drawing invisible tracks. Each line is an era. Revolution, industrial, civil rights. Transfers happen when people get tired of waiting for change. Jessica wrote fast, absorbing every metaphor. By the end of the week, her quiz scores at Hawthorne climbed from barely passing to solid Bs. For the first time in months, she didn't dread seeing her name on the board. Every evening, after Ruth settled, or sometimes after Ruth's storm subsided, Venessa went to the public library. The librarians thought she was waiting for her mother, so they let her stay until closing. On the public terminals, she searched Hawthorne preparatory syllabus and copied notes onto the backs of grocery receipts and old envelopes. She studied the same material Jessica would face, rehearsing explanations, simplifying terms until they made perfect sense. To her, every concept was a puzzle, and every solved piece was proof that she belonged anywhere she wanted to be. She left the library when the streetlights came on, clutching her papers like fragile treasure. Meanwhile, Hawthorne's parents had found new gossip. At the Friday recital, one mother whispered, "Did you hear about the security breach at the Wallace estate? Someone said it was a trespasser, maybe a runaway." Jessica, standing near the juice table, froze. "A trespasser," another voice said. "You'd think the richest man in Weston could afford better cameras." The laughter that followed felt sharp. Jessica's hand tightened on her cup. She excused herself and walked outside, her heartbeat in her throat. That night, she almost didn't pack the sandwiches. Almost. At the shelter, Ruth's episode began with humming and ended in screams. She clawed at the air, shouting about invisible birds. The staff tried to calm her, but it was Venessa who knelt beside her mother, whispering a lullaby she'd memorized from library story time. "Stars go quiet, moon stands still," she sang, rubbing slow circles on Ruth's back. The rhythm worked, eventually. When her mother finally slept, Venessa sat in the dark corner, shaking but proud. She whispered to herself, "Tomorrow. I'll still go tomorrow." Jessica couldn't sleep either. The whispers from the recital clung to her like dust. What if someone found out? What if her father saw? Still, she couldn't stop thinking about Venessa's voice, the way the world made sense when she spoke. She scribbled a note on lined paper, folded it, and left it by the loose fence panel before sunrise. "If you can't come, I'll wait." When Venessa arrived late that afternoon, barefoot, exhausted, hair messy from the wind, Jessica's relief was instant. "You came." "Didn't promise I wouldn't," Venessa said, smiling faintly. "Let's start with geography today. Easier to see than to spell." Inside the mansion, the new motion alert pinged twice on Bright Wallace's phone. He was mid-Zoom with investors, talking about quarterly returns, when the notification flashed. South Lawn movement detected. He muted himself, walked toward the terrace doors, and stepped outside. The wind carried laughter again. Light, real, too familiar. Bright followed the sound with slow, deliberate steps. From the terrace rail, he saw two figures beneath the oak. His daughter and the same barefoot girl from the clip. Jessica was reading aloud. Slow, halting, but reading. And the girl was nodding, guiding her through each line like a conductor with music only she could hear. Bright's hand froze on the door handle. His heart did something he didn't expect. It softened before it clenched. Security just flagged a shadow on the south lawn. And Jessica's first real smile is about to cost them both. The secret lessons are blooming, but the risk is rising fast. The air under the oak was gentler that afternoon, as if the world itself knew to hold its breath. Jessica sat cross-legged, the heavy history book spread open between them. Venessa leaned forward, one finger tracing the first line. "Start here," she said softly. Jessica took a breath. "In 76. The words stumbled, stuck, blurred. Her throat tightened. "I can't." "You can," Venessa said. "Just slower. Tap the rhythm, like a song." She clapped gently. 1, 2. Pause, marking the beats of each syllable. Jessica followed, uncertain at first, then with growing confidence. "The Claire, Tion, of, in, pen, dence, was, signed." When she reached the end of the sentence, she blinked. The words hadn't slipped away this time. They'd stayed still, obedient, clear. Venessa grinned. "See? It's just music you haven't learned the tune to yet." Jessica laughed, startled by her own relief. "You make it sound easy." "It isn't easy," Venessa said. "You just needed the right beat." Inside the mansion, Bright Wallace ended another video call with the words that had begun to taste like cardboard. "Impact metrics," he muttered, closing his laptop. He stared at the foundation report on his desk. Charts, numbers, phrases like bridging educational gaps. Empty promises dressed as progress. From his study window, he caught the faint sound of laughter. Two voices. One he knew by heart, one unfamiliar. The same tone from the footage he couldn't stop replaying. He hesitated. Then, for reasons he couldn't quite explain, he put his phone in his pocket and stepped outside. Back under the oak, Jessica was scribbling in her notebook. "If I can read this paragraph, you have to let me give you something," she said, half teasing. Venessa frowned. "You already gave me your sandwich yesterday." "I mean, something else. Money, maybe?" Venessa shook her head. "No." Jessica blinked. "Why not?" "Because I'm not doing this for that," Venessa said quietly. "If you really want to pay me, give me 10 more minutes tomorrow, with the book." Jessica's eyes softened. "Deal, but you're taking lunch too. Non-negotiable." "Bossy," Venessa said, smirking. "Efficient," Jessica countered. and both girls laughed. When the breeze picked up, the pages fluttered, and a yellow oak leaf drifted down between them. Venessa picked it up and turned it over in her hand. "You know what helps me remember sounds?" she said. "Drawing them." She borrowed Jessica's pen and began to sketch simple shapes, lines for syllables, dots for stressed beats, loops for silent letters. "See? It's like a map for your mouth," she explained. "A sound map." Jessica leaned close, fascinated. "That's actually brilliant." Venessa smiled shyly and handed her the leaf. "Keep it. A reminder that words can be built, not just read." Jessica tucked it carefully inside her notebook. "Then you'll have to make me another tomorrow." From the terrace above, Bright stepped into view, his shoes silent on the stone. He followed the sound of voices until the manicured grass gave way to shade. He saw them then, his daughter in her polished uniform, and the girl from the footage, barefoot and calm, sitting shoulder to shoulder beneath the oak. Between them lay an open book, a leaf scribbled with patterns, and the faint echo of laughter that didn't belong to fear. For one suspended moment, Bright didn't move. He just watched. Jessica was reading again, slow, steady, smiling, and the barefoot girl was nodding like a proud teacher. The sight knocked the air from his chest. Reflex said, "Call security." Something deeper said, "Listen." He took a single step forward, and the sound of his footfall rippled through the grass. Venessa looked up first. Jessica turned mid-sentence. The book lay open between them, the leaf half hidden beneath its pages. Bright Wallace stood in the sunlight behind them, expression unreadable, the distance between them narrowing like a held breath. He's here. The moment that changes everything. What will Bright Wallace do? Protect his world or open it? Bright Wallace's voice broke the silence first. "Who are you?" It wasn't a question. It was an order. Venessa froze. The book slipped from her lap, pages fanning open like startled wings. Jessica stood fast. "Dad, stop. She's not—" Bright took another step forward. "Why are you on my property?" Venessa scrambled to gather her things. The battered notebook, the stub of a pencil, the leaf marked with phonics patterns. "I didn't mean any harm, sir," she said, her voice small but steady. "I'll go." Jessica moved between them. "No, Dad, you don't understand." She held up the open history book. "She's the reason I can read this." Bright blinked. The words landed like a fault line splitting open. "The reason I can read this." He had spent years buying specialists, hiring tutors, installing digital programs that promised miracles. None had worked. And now, here, barefoot in his lawn, sat the miracle. For a long moment, no one moved. Bright's phone was already in his hand, security's number half dialed. He could still call, end this now, bury the story before it began. But he didn't press send. Instead, he asked quietly, "What's your name?" "Venessa Cole," she said. "Where do you live, Venessa?" "The shelter on Boylston Street sometimes," she said. "Sometimes the train shed, if my mom's having a bad night." Jessica's eyes widened. "You never told me." Venessa shrugged, clutching her notebook tighter. "Didn't want you to worry." "I'm fine. We're fine." Bright's next question came out softer than he meant. "Your mother?" "She's sick," Venessa said. "Schizo. Something. I can't say it right. The hospital called it that. She hears things that aren't there. I try to keep her calm." She hesitated, then added, "I owe the library $3 for a lost book. That's the only place that lets me learn now." Jessica's chin trembled. Bright's throat tightened. Something inside him, a pride he mistook for control, began to crack. He lowered his phone. Slowly. Deliberately. Then he opened his contacts, not to security, but to Dr. Patel, psychiatric intake, Mass General. Hi, yes. It's Bright Wallace. I have a case I need assessed immediately. A woman, untreated schizoaffective disorder, accompanied by a minor. Can we arrange transport tonight? Venessa stared. You're helping her? He didn't look up from his phone. That's what's supposed to happen when someone needs help. His next call went to a housing attorney from his foundation's board. Yes, I need a temporary stabilization request filed for a client under my sponsorship. Today, please. Jessica exhaled, stunned. Venessa just blinked, as if trying to memorize the shape of this new reality. That night, the kitchen lights glowed warm. Sandwiches became supper. Simple things: tomato soup, toasted bread, sliced fruit. Venessa ate slowly, careful not to spill, her posture straight from lessons she'd read about in library etiquette books. Jessica talked non-stop, about the oak, the lessons, the metaphors. Bright listened, really listened, for the first time in years. When they were done, he opened his laptop again, this time to email the head of Hawthorne Prep. Subject: Proposal for Pilot Literacy Partnership. Let's discuss an initiative pairing peer-based learning with adaptive methods. I believe I've found proof of concept. Later, the security chief appeared in the doorway. Sir, with all due respect, we can't allow her back on the property. Liability. Press, exposure. Bright interrupted. Then make me the liability. He signed the waiver himself. If there's a scandal, it's mine. The chief hesitated, then nodded and left. Bright turned back to Venessa, kneeling so his eyes met hers. From today, he said, voice firm but kind, you are not doing this alone. Not your mother, not your learning, not any of it. Venessa's eyes shimmered. For the first time in her 12 years, an adult's promise sounded like truth. A billionaire just traded reputation for redemption. But what happens when the world finds out? The next morning, the city looked different to Venessa, not brighter, but clearer. For the first time, there was a plan. At Mass General Hospital, fluorescent lights hummed softly over white walls that smelled of antiseptic and promise. Venessa sat beside her mother, Ruth, who was speaking gently to herself, tracing invisible shapes in the air. A woman in a blue coat entered, Dr. Aisha Patel, her badge clipped neatly to her pocket. Venessa, she said, kneeling to her level. Your mother needs rest and medication. We can help her, but she'll need a guardian on paper. That's where Mr. Wallace's team comes in. Venessa frowned. You mean someone else decides for her? Dr. Aisha nodded kindly. Just for now, until she's stable. It's to protect her, not replace her. Across the hall, a new voice joined the conversation. A woman in a burgundy suit, with folders tucked under her arm, stepped forward. Marisol Vega, she said, extending a hand. Housing and family law. Mr. Wallace asked me to handle your mother's case, and yours. Venessa hesitated before shaking her hand. You're a lawyer? Marisol smiled. And a believer in second chances. We'll get your mom treatment, then secure your housing under the Wallace Trust. 2 days later, Venessa held a key for the first time. The apartment wasn't large, just one bedroom, a kitchenette, and a window that looked out toward the Charles River. But to her, it was a castle. The walls smelled of new paint and safety. When the door clicked shut, it didn't feel like the world closing her out. It felt like it was finally letting her in. On the small table, a note waited. Welcome home. There's food in the fridge and books on the shelf. B.W. Venessa ran her fingers across the ink, as if it were something sacred. Meanwhile, Bright was in motion. He had called in every favor he'd ever been owed. By week's end, Hawthorne Prep had a new consultant, Mr. Feld, a Reading science specialist with a reputation for turning letters into bridges. Jessica sat in the classroom as Feld unpacked his materials. We'll design a plan around how your brain learns, not how people think it should, he said. And Venessa, he turned to the girl beside her, you're part of that plan too. Venessa blinked. Me? Jessica's peer instructor, Feld said. You see patterns most people miss. We'd be fools not to use that. Jessica grinned. Told you you're brilliant. Venessa smiled shyly. Only if we do it together. But not everyone shared the enthusiasm. At Hawthorne, whispers moved faster than facts. From Parents of Hawthorne Prep. Subject: Urgent, security breach on Wallace Estate. Is it true a street girl is now in partnership with the school? Is this safe? Is this another publicity stunt? Screenshots of the thread reached Bright before breakfast. His jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. He'd learned the difference between image and impact. By afternoon, however, the school librarian sent him something else. Venessa Cole. I'm nominating her for the City Youth Scholars Program. She's already tutoring 2 students after hours. You might have started a movement, Mr. Wallace. Bright exhaled. Finally, proof that change didn't need headlines to count. That evening, Venessa and Jessica sat side by side in the library. Jessica had just read a full paragraph aloud, slow but fluent. Venessa beamed. See? Jessica said, laughing. Your plan works. Venessa reached into her pocket and pulled out the oak leaf, the one with her first sound sketch. She smoothed it flat and handed it over. Jessica smiled, then carefully pinned it inside her blazer, close to her heart. Now, she said, it goes where it belongs. The leaf fluttered softly when she moved, a symbol of 2 worlds learning to breathe together. From a hospital ward to a prep school classroom, the system is shifting, but not everyone wants it to. What happens next tests how far kindness can go before the world fights back. The morning air felt different, crisp, alert, waiting. Venessa smoothed the borrowed navy blazer over her shoulders and tugged the hem to hide the patch near the pocket. Her shoes, too big but clean, clicked softly against the marble floor of Hawthorne Preparatory. Behind the front desk, the receptionist looked up, startled. For a heartbeat, she didn't know what to do with the sight. A black girl with second-hand shoes and a library tote standing beneath the school's gilded crest. The murmurs began immediately. Is she visiting? Did someone lose their way? Venessa stood still, eyes darting to the heavy doors she'd once watched from the outside. They weren't locked today. Then a familiar voice broke the tension. She's with us. Bright Wallace strode in, polished and calm in a tailored gray suit, Jessica at his side. Jessica beamed and reached for Venessa's arm, linking it without hesitation. Good morning, Bright said smoothly to the receptionist. Ms. Cole is joining us under the Oak Pilot program. Please make sure she's listed for homeroom access. The woman blinked, then nodded quickly. Of course, Mr. Wallace. Together, they walked down the corridor. Jessica's grip stayed firm, a silent message to the whispering crowd. She belongs here. They passed the school's trophy case, gold plaques gleaming under the lights. Venessa paused. Those are for winning things, she whispered. Bright smiled faintly. We're about to change what that means. By lunchtime, the Oak program had its first circle. Mr. Feld arranged desks in a half-moon and gestured for Venessa to stand beside him. Everyone, he began, today's session isn't just about reading, it's about understanding how we learn. Miss Cole here has a few tricks that even I've started using. The class buzzed with curiosity. Venessa's fingers trembled as she picked up a piece of chalk. Okay, she said, her voice steadying. If a word feels too heavy, break it like a sandwich, bite by bite. She drew 2 halves of a word on the board, clapping the syllables as she spoke. Laughter rippled through the room. A boy in the front tried it and nailed the pronunciation. See, she grinned. Brains like rhythm. You don't fight the word, you dance with it. By the end of the week, 3 students had asked to join her study circle. Mr. Feld reported a 5-point leap in Jessica's comprehension tests. For the first time, Jessica raised her hand in class without hesitation. That evening, The Wallace estate glowed with quiet warmth. Dinner was simple, pasta and salad, but to Venessa, it felt like a ceremony. She tried to help set the table, but Bright waved her off. "Sit," he said. "You've earned rest." Jessica giggled when Venessa stared at the dishwasher as if it were magic. "It washes the plates for you," she explained. Venessa shook her head, laughing. "And here I've been scrubbing pans with soap and prayers." Bright smiled, a small, honest smile that surprised even him. He hadn't laughed like this in years, not since before Jessica's mother left. For a few quiet minutes, it didn't feel like charity or obligation. It felt like family. Outside, however, the world had already taken notice. A man in a car across the street adjusted his telephoto lens. He caught the perfect shot. Venessa at the gate, hair haloed by the porch light, Jessica waving beside her. By morning, the photo would be everywhere. Billionaire tech CEO Shelter Street Girl. PR move or modern miracle? Bright didn't know it yet, but the storm was coming. The tabloid headline hit before sunrise. Billionaire adopts street tutor. PR. Move or modern miracle? By noon, the photo was everywhere. Venessa's small frame beside Jessica, the golden gates behind them, Bright's face half turned as if caught between pride and guilt. But none of that mattered when Venessa stepped into the hospital garden. Ruth sat in a wheelchair near the hydrangeas, her hands folded like a child's. She hummed softly to herself, an old tune that drifted between sense and shadow. Venessa knelt beside her, uncertain. "Mom," she whispered. No response, only the hum. Jessica and Bright waited a few feet away, silent, watching. The wind lifted the hem of Venessa's borrowed coat. She reached out, gently placing her hand over her mother's. "Mom, it's me. It's Nessa." Ruth's humming stopped. Her eyes flicked up, unfocused at first, then slowly sharpening. "Nessa?" she said. The word was soft, but it struck like thunder. "My Nessa?" Venessa froze, tears filling her eyes before she could stop them. She nodded, choking out, "Yes, Mommy. I'm here." Ruth reached forward, trembling fingers brushing her daughter's cheek. "You came back." "I never left." And then, for the first time in the entire story, Venessa cried. Not the quiet endurance of the streets, but the shaking, cleansing kind that cracks open the chest and lets light in. Bright turned away, pretending to study the flowers. Jessica sniffed quietly beside him, clutching the oak leaf pinned inside her blazer. Some miracles didn't need cameras. By evening, the headlines had shifted tone. After a short press release from Bright Wallace's office, the narrative reframed. "This is not adoption or charity," his statement read. "This is infrastructure, housing, education, and access, built to last. We're expanding the Wallace Housing Trust to include family stabilization programs and launching new peer learning initiatives across Boston." Reporters had expected a billionaire's defense. Instead, they got a blueprint. The same PTA parents who once demanded security reviews were now emailing the school board. "Could Venessa help us design a student reading lab?" one wrote. "Our kids are responding to her methods." Mr. Feld's reply was simple. "She already has." Within 2 weeks, the Oak program became an official pilot. Student-led literacy circles funded quietly by the Wallace Foundation, named not after Bright or Jessica, but after the tree where 2 girls first shared a book. One night, back at the apartment, Venessa found Bright waiting by the doorway with a document in hand. "Ruth's care plan is stable," he said, "but the hospital still needs a legal contact, someone who can make decisions if she can't." Venessa's stomach nodded. "You mean a guardian?" "Not over you," Bright assured. "For your mother. Just while she recovers. I can step in if you'll let me." Venessa looked at the paper, then at him. "If I say yes, she's still mine. Always." Bright nodded solemnly. "Always. I'm just backup." She hesitated, then signed. The pen shook in her hand. Jessica grinned from the couch. That means you're basically family now. Venessa laughed through tears. I guess that makes you my annoying little sister. Jessica gasped. Excuse me? They all laughed. Even Bright, the kind of laugh that loosens years of quiet guilt. Days later, they returned to the hospital garden. A small oak sapling waited in a pot between them. Same kind? Jessica asked. Venessa nodded. Same kind. Together, they dug a small patch of earth near the bench where Ruth sat, humming softly. The soil crumbled easily between their hands. When the roots touched ground, the world felt steady again. Bright pressed the dirt down and said quietly, "May this one grow with roots that hold." Venessa smiled. "And branches that reach." The camera crews were gone. The noise had faded. But under the morning light, something real took root, stronger than headlines, deeper than rescue. A system built not from pity, but from people choosing to stand together. The world had moved on from the headlines, but for Venessa, life was just beginning to settle into shape. It had been 6 weeks since the hospital garden, and the small apartment in Alston now looked like home. The walls, once blank, were covered with taped drawings. Ruth's art therapy sketches, and Venessa's careful schedules, handwritten in marker. Each column had color codes and times. Wake up, visit mom, school, study, Oak Lab, dinner. It looked like order. It felt like safety. Ruth, now in outpatient care, painted most mornings. Her eyes were clearer, her voice soft again. "You always did like plans," she said one afternoon, watching Venessa pin a new page on the fridge. "Just don't forget to live inside them." Venessa smiled. "I'm learning how." At Hawthorne Prep, the Oak Lab had grown beyond anyone's expectations. 2 other schools had adopted the model, and the program now filled a full classroom with students from different grades reading together, slow, steady, unashamed. Jessica stood at the podium for the annual school showcase, her hands gripping the edges of her note cards. "Our project," she began, "is called How We Learn." Venessa stood beside her, beaming. Jessica continued, voice firm now. "I used to hide my dyslexia because I thought it made me broken. But Venessa taught me to read. Not just words, but myself. We all learn differently, and that's not a weakness. It's just another language." Applause rose from the back rows first. Teachers, librarians, then parents. The same PTA that once whispered about security risks now stood cheering for the barefoot girl who taught their children to read. Venessa whispered, "You nailed it." Jessica grinned. "We nailed it." Across town, Bright Wallace made quieter moves. He stepped away from press conferences and photo ops, focusing instead on rebuilding what he'd neglected, the systems beneath the spotlight. His ed-tech company, once obsessed with glossy metrics, was now being restructured around peer learning design. He brought in Mr. Feld to lead curriculum, Ms. Priya from the shelter as community consultant, and Marisol Vega as chief of family outreach. "I'm done performing charity," Bright told them in the boardroom. "We're building access now. No more speeches, just doors." The room went silent, then erupted into quiet nods of respect. For once, the billionaire wasn't the hero. He was part of the work. One golden Saturday, the 3 of them returned to the Wallace estate. The oak stood tall, its branches wider now, catching the light like it remembered everything that had happened beneath it. 3 chairs waited on the lawn. Jessica read aloud from a book, slow, confident, no stumbles. Venessa listened, pencil in hand, jotting notes in the margins. Bright sat beside them, not interrupting, just listening. When Jessica finished, Venessa said softly, "That's how you know it's working. When the words sound like yours." Bright nodded. "And when you stop trying to fix what isn't broken." For a while, They just sat there, the breeze carrying the sound of turning pages. As they packed up to leave, Venessa noticed the old gate panel, once cracked, now repaired. But beside it was something new, a small keypad. "What's the code?" she asked. Jessica winked. "It's ours. We chose it together." Venessa typed the numbers, and the gate clicked open with a soft, welcoming sound. Access remembered, not erased. They stepped through side by side. The girl from the shelter, the daughter of wealth, and the man who finally understood what real power was for. Because two kids from opposite zip codes had solved what money alone couldn't. One had knowledge, the other had power. And together, they made a door. If this story moved you, imagine what we can build next, together. Hit subscribe to join this journey of second chances, like to spread hope, share with someone who believes in kindness that changes lives, and comment one word you're taking with you. What's yours?